Two black birds sit on the same wire. One of them opens its beak and calls out, sharp and fast, caw, caw, caw. The other one leans back and lets out a low, rough croak that seems to come from somewhere deep in its chest. A person walking by glances up for 2 seconds and thinks the exact same thing. Crows. That person is probably wrong about at least one of those birds. Picture two hikers on a mountain trail. One points up at a black bird gliding over the ridge and says, "Look, a crow." The other nods and keeps walking. Neither one realizes they just watched a raven soaring on a wind current, because from that distance, against a bright sky, a black silhouette is a black silhouette. This tiny, everyday moment happens thousands of times a day, in backyards, parking lots, farms, and forests all across the country. This is the moment where almost everyone makes the same mistake. From far away, in bad light, in a quick photo, or against a bright sky, crows and ravens look almost identical. Same glossy black feathers, same general shape, same habit of showing up wherever there is food, trouble, or an open field. Your brain sees big black bird, files it under crow, and stops looking any further. But once you know the one clue that exposes the truth, you will never make that mistake again. Most people think crows and ravens are basically the same animal wearing the same costume. That is the belief we are about to break apart, piece by piece. Here is where the confusion really starts. Crows and ravens belong to the same bird family. They share ancestors, similar coloring, similar intelligence, and similar habits, like eating almost anything and gathering wherever humans leave food behind. Put a crow and a raven side by side in a blurry photo, and even experienced bird watchers sometimes pause before answering. This is why nature documentaries occasionally get corrected in the comment section. This is why farmers argue over which bird is really raiding the cornfield. This is why old paintings, folklore, and even some museum signs have mixed the two up for centuries. If professionals get confused, you should not feel bad about mixing them up either. Part of the problem is age and lighting. A young crow can look unusually large for a few weeks after leaving the nest, while a young raven can look smaller and sleeker than a fully grown adult. Add in harsh sunlight, shaded branches, or a bird standing far across a field, and even the size difference that normally helps you can temporarily disappear. This is exactly why relying on just one clue, like size or color, will eventually trick you. You need more than one piece of evidence, the same way a detective would never close a case based on a single clue. So how do you actually crack this case? The fastest clue is not something you see. It is something you hear. Close your eyes for a second and imagine the sound. A crow's call is sharp, quick, and slightly nasal. It comes out as a fast, repeated caw, 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 almost like the bird is asking the same short question over and over, sometimes ending in an abrupt little rattle. A raven's call is completely different. It is deep, rough, and slow, a low cronk or gronk that sounds more like a growl than a bird call, almost like the bird is speaking from somewhere lower in its throat. Once you hear that difference, you cannot unhear it. The crow sounds busy and sharp, like it is in a hurry to say something. The raven sounds heavy and slow, like it does not need to rush. That one detail changes everything, because it means you do not even need a clear view of the bird to know which one you are dealing with. You just need to listen. Stand in a forest at dusk with your eyes closed, and the voice alone will tell you the answer. A fast cutting caw means crow. A slow, throaty croak means raven. There is more to the voice than just the main call, and this is where it gets even more interesting. Ravens have one of the largest vocal ranges of any bird in the world. Besides the deep croak, they can produce knocking sounds, gurgles, and even imitate other animals, including wolves and, in captivity, human speech. Crows have a smaller range of calls, but they use them with purpose, using different sounds to warn about ground predators, aerial predators, or simply to call the group together to feed. This is the mistake most people make. They assume a bird call is just noise. In reality, the call is basically a name tag, and once you learn to read it, identification becomes almost instant. But sound is not the only clue, and once you actually get a clear look at the bird, several visual differences appear that are just as reliable. The first major difference is size, and it is a bigger gap than most people expect. A common raven can measure close to 25 inches from beak to tail, with a wingspan that can stretch close to 4 feet. putting it in the same size range as a red-tailed hawk. An American crow is noticeably smaller, closer to 17 inches long, roughly the size of a large pigeon. If you ever get lucky enough to see both birds together, the raven looks like the crow's much bigger, heavier cousin. The second major difference is the tail shape, and this clue works beautifully when the bird is flying overhead. When a crow fans its tail open in flight, the edge looks rounded and even, almost like an open hand fan cut in a smooth curve. When a raven fans its tail open, the shape looks completely different. It forms a wedge, almost like a diamond or the tip of an arrow, because the middle feathers are noticeably longer than the outer ones. The easiest clue is hiding in plain sight the entire time, right there in the shape of the tail. People stare at color, see black, and stop looking any further. But color tells you almost nothing here, because both birds share nearly the same deep glossy black sheen. The tail shape, on the other hand, never lies. There is also a clear difference in the beak and the throat. A raven's beak is thick, heavy, and slightly curved at the tip, almost like a small hunting knife built for tearing into tougher food. Around a raven's throat, you will often notice shaggy, ruffled feathers sticking outward, almost like a rough collar or a small beard. A crow's beak is thinner and straighter, built more for quick pecking than heavy tearing, and its throat feathers lie completely flat and smooth. Even the flight style gives the bird away before you ever see the tail clearly. Crows flap steadily and directly, beating their wings at a fairly constant rhythm, almost like they are commuting somewhere with a fixed schedule. Ravens glide and soar much more than crows do, often riding air currents with barely a flap, and they are known for playful aerial tricks, including rolling, tumbling, and flying upside down for short stretches, seemingly just for fun. Now let's talk about behavior, because personality is where these two birds really start to separate from each other. Crows are deeply social animals. They often travel, feed, and roost in groups, sometimes gathering by the hundreds or even thousands at nighttime roosts, especially in colder months. They cooperate with each other, sound alarm calls to warn the group about danger, and have been observed gathering around a dead crow in what researchers describe as a kind of investigation, almost like trying to understand what killed one of their own. Ravens tend to be more independent. Many ravens travel alone or in a bonded pair that can last for life, and instead of joining a large flock, they usually defend a wide territory of their own. Ravens have a reputation for being bold, curious, and a little bit mischievous. They have been filmed sliding down snowy rooftops just to slide down again, stealing shiny objects purely out of curiosity rather than hunger, and even teasing other animals like wolves or dogs by darting close and pulling back. This is where the intelligence comparison gets genuinely fascinating. Crows can recognize individual human faces and hold on to that memory for years, and they can pass that information to other crows, meaning an entire flock can learn to distrust a specific person who once threatened one of them. Ravens have solved multi-step puzzles originally designed to test problem-solving in young children, and in several studies, ravens have hidden food, then moved it to a new hiding spot later if they noticed another bird had been watching, which suggests they understand that other animals have their own point of view. Crows also show a strong sense of teamwork when facing danger. If a hawk or an owl gets too close, a group of crows will often gang up on it together, diving and calling loudly until the predator gives up and leaves the area, a behavior researchers call mobbing. Ravens rarely need backup like this. A single raven is large enough and confident enough to stand its ground against most threats on its own, and pairs of ravens have even been seen working together to distract a larger animal away from a food source, while the other one grabs the meal. So if the question is which bird is smarter, the honest answer is that both are near the very top of the intelligence scale for birds, and in some tests, corvids in general have matched or outperformed young chimpanzees. Scientists are still studying exactly how crow intelligence and raven intelligence compare to each other. Habitat is another place where these two birds reveal very different survival strategies. Crows have adapted almost perfectly to human environments. They thrive in cities, suburbs, farmland, parking lots, and parks. They will eat almost anything, including insects, seeds, garbage, and farm crops, and they have learned to use roads and traffic to their advantage, sometimes placing hard nuts on pavement so that passing car tires crack them open. If you live in a typical American town, the blackbird pulling apart a fast food bag in a parking lot is almost certainly a crow. Ravens tend to prefer wilder, more remote landscapes. You are far more likely to spot a raven near mountains, deserts, coastlines, cliffs, or dense wilderness than in a busy downtown street, although some ravens have adapted to smaller towns near wild areas. Ravens are tough survivors built for harsh conditions, and they are famous for following wolves and other large predators, waiting to feed on the leftovers of a kill. That partnership with wolves, along with their habit of showing up near battlefields and burial sites in old stories, is part of why ravens carry a darker, more mysterious reputation across so many cultures. In Norse mythology, the god Odin was said to have two ravens, Hugin and Munin, who flew across the world each day and returned to whisper what they had seen. Edgar Allan Poe built an entire famous poem around a raven that would not stop repeating a single word. Crows rarely get that same dramatic treatment in old stories. Instead, they are usually pictured as clever, everyday neighborhood troublemakers, stealing a sandwich off a picnic table rather than delivering a message from the gods. Diet reflects this same split in lifestyle. Crows are opportunistic feeders that lean heavily on whatever humans leave behind, including seeds, insects, roadkill, garbage, and farm crops, which is exactly why they thrive in cities and farmland. Ravens eat a similarly wide variety of food, but they rely more on carrion in wild areas, often arriving at a carcass before larger scavengers do, using their intelligence to locate food across huge stretches of open land where meals are far less predictable. Now here comes the human confusion section, because this is where the mix-up really causes real-world problems. Online, people constantly caption any large black bird as a crow, even when the wingspan and wedge-shaped tail clearly point to a raven. On farms, scarecrows are built with crows in mind, yet ravens sometimes visit the exact same fields and get blamed for damage a crow actually caused, or the other way around. In documentaries, narrators sometimes use crow as a casual stand-in for the whole corvid family, which only adds more confusion for casual viewers. Even zoos and museums have had to correct display labels over the years after sharp-eyed visitors pointed out the wrong bird was on the sign. Part of the reason this mix-up keeps happening is that crows and ravens are genuinely close relatives, both belonging to the same bird family, called corvids, alongside magpies, jays, and jackdaws. This shared family tree explains the shared black feathers, the shared cleverness, and the shared taste for scavenging. It is an honest mistake, not a careless one, but once you know the real clues, this mistake becomes almost impossible to make again. Here is your 5-second identification test, the kind you can actually use the next time one of these birds crosses your path. First, listen to the call. A sharp, fast, repeated caw means crow. A slow, deep, rough cronk means raven. Second, check the size compared to nearby objects or birds. A bird close to pigeon-sized suggests crow. A bird close to hawk-sized suggests raven. Third, watch the tail shape if the bird takes off. A rounded fan-shaped tail with an even edge means crow. A wedge-shaped tail that comes to a point in the middle means raven. Fourth, look at the throat feathers if you get a clear view. Smooth and flat feathers mean crow. Shaggy ruffled feathers mean raven. Fifth, notice the flight style. Steady, constant flapping suggests crow. Long glides, soaring, and playful tumbling suggest raven. And as a bonus clue, think about where you are standing. A lone black bird gliding over an empty canyon, a mountain ridge, or a stretch of desert is more likely a raven. A group of black birds gathered in a city park, a farm field, or a parking lot is more likely a group of crows. If you only remember one clue from this entire video, remember the voice, because it works from far away, it works in poor light, and it even works if the bird is hidden behind a tree. Now for the fun part. Which one is more powerful, more dangerous, or more surprising? In raw physical strength, the raven wins clearly. It is bigger, heavier, and carries a thicker, stronger beak, strong enough that ravens have been recorded chasing off hawks and eagles from a shared meal. In terms of surprising behavior, the two birds are almost neck and neck. Crows have shown the ability to recognize faces, hold grudges for years, and pass warnings down to their offspring. Ravens have shown planning behavior that includes deceiving other ravens about hidden food, and in laboratory tests, ravens chose to save a tool or a token now so they could trade it for a better reward hours later, a kind of future planning and self-control once thought to belong only to humans and great apes. As for danger, neither bird poses a real threat to a normal person going about their day. Both are naturally cautious around humans, and the only time either bird becomes aggressive is when a nest full of chicks feels threatened, which is true of almost any wild bird protecting its young. In terms of pure brain power, though, both crows and ravens are usually placed among the smartest animals on the planet, mentioned in the same breath as elephants, dolphins, and great apes. So the honest verdict is this: ravens win on size and physical power, crows win on teamwork and social memory, and both birds are equally remarkable when it comes to raw intelligence. Let's bring everything back together. The next time you spot a large black bird and you are not sure what you are looking at, do not rely on the color, because the color will tell you nothing useful here. Listen first. A sharp, fast caw means crow. A slow, deep cronk means raven. Then check the tail. Rounded and fan-shaped means crow. Wedge-shaped and pointed means raven. Then check the size and the throat. Smaller with a smooth throat means crow. Bigger with a shaggy throat means raven. Once you notice these clues side by side, you cannot unsee them again, and you will never confuse these two birds for the rest of your life. Remember the hikers from the beginning of this video, the ones who glanced up at a blackbird and called it a crow without a second thought. Now imagine that same moment happening again, except this time one of them pauses, listens to that low, rough croak drifting down from the ridge, and says, "Wait, that's not a crow, that's a raven." That is the difference between glancing at a bird and actually understanding it. Two blackbirds, two very different voices, one truth that was hiding in plain sight the entire time. Now you know exactly how to tell them apart, using nothing more than your eyes, your ears, and 5 simple clues you will never forget.